Hey T-Wolves, Mrs. Stuart here helping you kick off Sustainability Week. Today I'm going to show you some things you can do in your own backyard to help protect native species and live a more sustainable lifestyle. So one of the things that I started last year that I quickly found was way easier than I thought it was going to be was create a vermicomposting system, which is basically a bin full of worms and food scraps and paper scraps and all kinds of other things that slowly turn into soil. So what I have here is just a regular plastic bin. I have some holes punched in the top, and if we open this up, we always have a couple of them trying to escape out. Ruka is saying hello as well. This all started as just paper with a little bit of water. So this is actually just the work of all of the worms turning in food scraps and other things into soil. This is my bin that I keep our food scraps in throughout the week. We usually feed the worms about once a week. We have a carbon filter on the top so that our food scraps don't get super smelly. And in here we put our fruit scraps and our vegetable scraps. And all kinds of other things, as long as it's not like dairy or meat products, and we dump it in and feed it to the worms. And over time, the worms are going to break all of this stuff down, and we usually try to kind of dig to the bottom every once in a while to make sure that everything's getting enough oxygen and that all of the worms in here are getting the food that they need. So in addition to doing things to help turn our food waste into something useful like soil, my husband and I have also been trying to create a safe space for local bird species in our backyard. So a few things that we've been doing over here. This is a feeder specifically for finches. So we have a couple of native finch species around here. We get a lot of house finches, we get a lot of lesser goldfinches, and as you can see, they make quite a mess and they come really often. We also have found that adding water next to a food source is one of the best ways to get all kinds of different bird species, a variety of bird species. We've been seeing really mostly native bird species, which is always beneficial because a lot of times, especially in a suburban environment, invasive species are more likely to thrive. So anything that we can do to help our native bird species get the food and the resources they need can always be super helpful. So one thing that you can do for them, especially in a really dry place like Southern California, is to give them a water source. So we've rigged up our very eco-friendly little water source here. This is a bottle that we recycled and a little tray that we recycled off of a cat carrier, and it refills this water, and we see birds bathe in this all the time. We see birds drinking water out of it all the time. They seem to use it a lot. Over here we have our hummingbird feeder, as well as one flower is taken off of it to allow other nectar feeding species like orange-crowned warblers to be able to fit their larger beaks in there. So the hummingbirds and the warblers both share this. Down here we also have another water source. Typically, birds really like to have a source of water that's close to the ground or in a really sheltered place. So I just really enjoy sitting out here, watching the birds come in, seeing what different kinds of birds that we can get, and just feeling like we're creating a safe space for them to come in the middle of the suburban area that we live. Speaking of birds, if you have a cat that likes to go outside, you may have unfortunately realized that sometimes cats are not a bird's best friend. So one thing that we do to give our cat a little outdoor time and also protect our native bird species is we got this bird-friendly cat collar. It makes her look a little like a clown. But what it does is make her a little bit more visible to bird species, especially songbirds, so that they can see her coming. And she's also just not a very good huntress anyway, but this is an extra added layer of protection for our bird friends to make sure that we're not reducing any of our local bird species in the area by having a domesticated cat out in our backyard. There are lots of ways to be sustainable, and the best way to get involved is to just find something that you're interested in. I really like birds, so I have a lot of fun learning more about them and finding new creative ways to help them out in our own backyard. If you're into fashion, look into different ways that you can make your fashion habits more sustainable by buying used clothing or having clothing swaps with your friends. If you're into video games, research companies that are trying to help create the video gaming industry a more sustainable industry. There are so many options, and that's the fun part. You can get creative with it and you can find a lot of different ways to make small lifestyle changes or find ways to support different initiatives that can have potentially a good positive impact on the earth. This year, I think we've kind of been seeing with the pandemic how connected everything is. We're seeing how our actions can have an impact on other people. We're seeing how small this planet is that we share with everybody else. And so going into Sustainability Week, I always kind of like to think about and reflect on the importance of thinking about others and not just thinking about the people around us, but thinking about future generations, thinking about other living things like birds, and thinking about ways that we can help others by using resources in a way that's going to make sure that every person and future generations and every living thing is able to have access to the resources that they need to survive and to thrive. So I hope you take some time to think about ways you can conserve resources and help the earth this week. Think about it next week. Think about it every week after that. And just think about things that you can do that are good for the earth and good for the pack. See you later, T-Wolves.